जय हिंद, वेलकम टू डेव टॉक्स। दिस इज आदि अचिंत। आज बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग सब्जेक्ट के बारे में हम बात करेंगे, इंडिया का इंटरनल सिक्योरिटी। वन ऑफ द थिंग्स दैट वी विल रियलाइज दैट इंडिया की जो इंटरनल सिक्योरिटी है इज नॉट जस्ट इंटरनल सिक्योरिटी, इज कनेक्टेड टू अ लॉट मेनी थिंग्स व्हिच आर आउटसाइड इंडिया एज वेल। अब ये इसको बोलते हैं, लॉट ऑफ पीपल कॉल दिस द हाफ फ्रंट, the two and a half front threat to India. A lot of people talk about the situation of the security in a lot of different aspects. काफी चीजों के बारे में बात करते हैं कि भाई यहाँ पर एक थ्रेट है, उधर पे एक थ्रेट है, एंटी इंडिया नैरेटिव है, whole lot of things are there. Today we'll try and make sense of all this stuff. So, sir, good evening, Major General Rajiv Narayanan. Sir has prepared एक थोड़ी presentation बनाई है, so we'll go through that and then we'll take your questions as to what your thoughts are about this particular thread. But sir, before that, thank you so much for doing the workup and joining me for this particular discussion.
Most welcome, Adi. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. Uh, Before the people who are listening in get worried, it's a very small talk that I'll give.
Did
It's
you
a
know most travel?
oh, it's not
Anyway,
load. It's not loading.
yes, I'll put it online. There
Yeah.
we go.
So the basically we all keep talking of two and a half front, and self and Adi we felt that no, the internal situation cannot be restricted to just half a front because of the multi-domain threat architecture that we get. So as you see on the map, what you see in red are the likely threats, direction of the physical threats that you will get from China, that is continental in the north, and both in the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea, you get a maritime threat. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, I have left one arrow because its maritime domain at the moment is not that strong. And what you see blank covering most of India are the internal challenges which have an external dimension, and hence we need to be careful about it. So these are the few questions that I posed for myself, which is India facing a two and a half or a three front threat we spoke about? Should the internal threats and challenges be looked upon as half a front or a full front? Then we look at internal challenges from who all, and how are strategies evolved, capabilities identified, and structures formed? And how can India counter this globalist challenge? When I talk of strategies, I'll give a little more detail into the military strategy, but you need a multi-domain strategy also. And towards the end would cover certain my personal views of how you can face up to this challenge which is coming in the mid to the near to the medium term, and of course long term it will be there. Now what is it? When you look at half a front, you are looking at it only as counter-terrorism or counter-insurgency or anti-naxal threat. It's a very limiting sort of a focus when you say half front only. Sorry, they are manifold in every sphere of life. Some of them I've listed here:
Mhm.
cyber, digital, information, media, psychological, legal, education, economic, commercial, political, socio-political, space, cartographic, gray zone warfare, disruptive technology. And these are ongoing both during peace and war. Abhi bhi chal raha hai tumhare saath. And that is the reason I felt, and I'm sure Adi would agree with me, that this also has to be looked as a separate front. Every domain has to be counted. Now, who all are are the internal challenges coming from? We know China.
Hmm.
It has to counter India's rise because it's contrary. It's a threat to its narrative. It is trying to sell its dream to the neighboring nations that become autocratic and centralize the economy like me, then you will grow. But if India, which is democratic and rises economically and grows strong, then there is a counter narrative to what China is saying, and there'll be two suns in the sky, two rising powers, and which China can't countenance. Pakistan is a very peculiar thing. This is the only country which has an army which controls the country. That means the army has control of a tract of land which is called Pakistan. And it can survive only by painting India as a threat.
Hmm.
Keep crying wolf, wolf. Only then it can control Pakistan. The day the threat from India is gone, then there is no value for Pakistan army left. So that is the basic problem existing as far as the neighbor to the west is concerned. Then you have fifth columnist inside your own country, subverted either by the lure of the lucre or ideology or a perverted sense of injustice, which is, I will come to later when I'll talk about the narrative wars, which a beautiful paper Aadi has already written, people who have not read it, the war of narratives. Right? It's not just Ukraine where the narratives is going
Hmm.
on. It's come
Hmm.
into focus, but it is already existing within India. And we can discuss anything, any questions on that in the Q&A. And you mislead politicians who are misled. You have intelligentsia, media. Now these get, a lot of them get misled through reflective control, through managing, same thing which we talk about, the narrative.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, little realizing that they are doing things, they feel that for them to come into political power, but how does it disrupt the rise of India and the national power? That is not thought about, and which is a very dangerous thing. And I might just mention there is nothing surprising in what they do. Even our own Chanakya Arthashastra mentions this as part of Kootaniti. Every country which wants to rise and which is strong will do things to prevent the rise of challenges.
Other countries. Hmm.
Other countries, okay, whoever is coming up as a challenge. This is the standard norm of geopolitics and geostrategy. We should never get perturbed and get angry कि वो क्यों कर रहा है यार, वो अपने देश के लिए कर रहा है. Like you want to do something for yourself, he is also doing it. The most important thing for us within India today is we must understand and be aware and counter such internal challenges to our CNP. Because remember, a clash of arms is when war is declared.
हाँ जी.
This is ongoing. So this third front carries on even without war being declared. Now, let us look at how strategies are evolved. I'll give a little bit about the military, being a military man. And that is how you extrapolate to take it on for other multi domains. Before you go, anyway, for any strategy, your political goal has to be clear. What is your goal? What do you want to achieve? So, when we look at military strategy, the political goal dictates the military objectives. But it is not so easily linear. The
हाँ.
level of enemy's obstinacy in fighting will determine how far reaching your military objectives should be. Look at what is happening in Ukraine. The obstinacy there is now made Putin realize, and hence he brought in 3 lakh reservists and other things and concentrated on the basic military objective that he wants to achieve.
Hmm.
So, the obstinacy will declare how deep your military objectives have to be. So, basically, 3 issues come. If the political goal is limited, but you're facing a determined enemy, it needs far reaching military objectives. You cannot make do with limited aim and limited thrust.
Hmm.
Sorry, you will
Hmm.
not achieve
Hmm.
it. Okay. Similarly, this is like India versus Pakistan. Pakistan is obstinate. If you're looking at कि भाई मैं limited जाके उसको I will get him to the negotiating table and do something, sorry, he will have his notion of victory that I have achieved a stalemate. I have lost a little bit, I have achieved a stalemate. Such a big strong power like India could achieve nothing. So, like even today, the Pakistan army teaches its people in school that 71 they won a war. They have forgotten
हाँ.
that Bangladesh, East Pakistan is cut away from them as a new nation. They have forgot. They don't mention about that. They only talk about blunting the offensive on the west. Little realizing our goal was to hold in the west and destroy in the east. That was the overall aim. That's what you did and you achieved. Now, if your political goal is ambitious, even if you face a moderate or an obstinate enemy, your military objectives have to be deep, far reaching. Like India versus East Pakistan. China, when it attacked India in 1962, the political goal was to cut India to size and make sure that Nehru doesn't be the face of NAM or the third world. But hence, the military objectives had to go in deeper. Once that was achieved, they pulled back. Now, only if your goal is limited and enemy is not obstinate can you set limited military objectives. Now, it was like India versus West Pakistan, because in 71 war I am giving, your aim was limited. The enemy was not that obstinate at that point in time. Radicalization had not taken place. And he was more worried about the Eastern theater.
Eastern.
India, when you are going to against China, when you go against China today, your aims are limited, your goals are limited, so your objectives will be limited. We'll come to that whenever we discuss the military strategy. So the military objectives now, as you derived from these situations towards the north, towards the west, this dictates the military strategy. To achieve that, you derive your capabilities. What should be the capabilities be to do that? And from there come the force structures, how best these capabilities can be used.
Employed.
So before any campaign, the political goal has to be clear that what is the end state to be achieved. And the stark contrast is the 71 war when we went in the east and Russia's war in Ukraine. Two white and black, as we call demos in the army. White demo is a good demo, black demo is a wrong demo. So this is what it is. Now, similarly, what is the political goal in other domains? What is your vision? What do you want to do? What are the kinds of threats that you will get? From there, you get your objectives, that this is what I want to do. From there, you will, from those objectives, you will decide what kind of capabilities in each domain I must have. And those capabilities will dictate what kind of policies you should lay down. And those policies will then dictate, is there a need for any restructuring in the organization which is going to execute that policy. Now, without this, just to say कि इस तरह से government का architecture है मैं चल दूंगा, I'm sorry. As we become more digitally connected and we are already global and you get digitally interconnected and you're going into the domain of digital currencies, all these issues you cannot have an old architecture. These architectures were okay. These are coming in from the 40s and the 50s. You can't come into the 21st century with a similar architecture. So let us look at the thrust. What is the threat you get from the West?
Pakistan.
Conventional is very limited. So he will always use a nuclear threat to limit the damage. This is what in early days we used to talk about the Indo-Pak escalation matrix. Towards the right, you find is Pakistan, where he wants to reduce this. You have subconventional, conventional, and nuclear. So he wants to reduce this gap between the subconventional and the nuclear, so that the damage that our conventional power can do on Pakistan would be reduced. India wants to keep it wider. As Christian Fair had written earlier in the last decade, Fighting to the End, Pakistan, as the weaker power in India-Pak dyad, believes that it must have escalation domination at all rungs of the military ladder, from the subconventional, which is the low intensity, as they call, to the conventional, to the nuclear, to ensure its survivability. Actually, what she's implying is he wants to go nuclear very fast.
Very fast.
But now that has taken a big hit in the last couple of years. The very strong border response that we have done in Myanmar and twice in Pakistan by ground and by air has upset this calculus. because he thought this single-sided conventional he would be able to control, and suddenly now he has realized that it has become a single-sided Indian conventional warfare response for which he has no answer at the moment.
Answer. Hmm.
And so he is now forced into a rethink, and that is why you find that the terrorist levels in JNK at the moment, and for whatever push they are trying to do in Khalistan, is not to that level as it used to be earlier, what we have seen in our service. Because it puts a question. Earlier, they used to talk of India's strategic restraint. Now, that gap they have to analyze now, and they are worried what is this gap, and that is why they keep harping on
Nuclear.
nuclear and keep doing things. Okay. So the terrorist threat that he gives is both trans and cis frontier. Trans means across into our area, and cis is own side. But trans is at the moment, like I said, restricted. It will partner with China to present a two front conventional threat. Whether China wants it or not, if China does something, he would like to do something to be able to achieve something. And concurrently, the inner challenges in India will be fueled at all times. So, what are these inner challenges? The internal cyber threat, support to Naxals with arms. Even if China wants to support them, he will make use of Pakistan as a proxy. It can come through Nepal. Just remember,
Networks are there. Hmm.
yeah, no. That Chinese lady who was caught uh, posing as a Tibetan woman who was here in India for 2 years as a spy, she's been caught. Uh, she had come through Nepal. She had border documents from Nepal. So these are the things that you're going to face. And you will use internal fissures of caste and religious disruptions to create problems. Of course, it is trying to revive the terrorism in JNK and Punjab if feasible, expand the terrorist activities to other key states. The recent spate of NIA arrests of a lot of people indicates that they are trying to go for a target which has a do something near, not target it per se, but do some terrorist event near a strategic, economic, or a religious facility.
Hmm.
It generates more news,
Impact.
more impact, and could lead to an internal backlash also. Okay. Now, what is the challenges from the north? We all know three warfare strategy: legal, psychological, public opinion. They keep, like I spoke about this woman who had come from the north. They will try to channel their own narratives. They won't do it directly. They'll do it through the media and other and the intelligentsia who are on their payroll, who will twist something and write in their favor. So that is the subversion which they will do through reflexive control. So you cannot point a finger at them. You have done something which suits them. Information warfare, divisive, negative, pessimistic negatives, create internal strifes. Look at the amount of space being generated for that Morbi Bridge vis-a-vis Korean Halloween crush. Just look at the gap. A lot of people died here, a lot of people died there. What
Yeah.
is going on?
It's pretty much the same number, as a matter of
Yeah,
fact, sir.
as a matter of fact, pretty much the same number. Here, the
Same
bridge
number.
broke because overload. There are investigations going on how extra people came, and there are people on record to have said there were some people who were
Taking
uh,
it.
shaking it and other things. So,
कोरिया में भी
but
वही है
there
सर.
it was Halloween crush. Everybody coming there and doing it. You have cyber attacks and all. Like short case had taken place some months ago on the electrical grid in Mumbai.
मुंबई.
Digital space, cartographic push, new maps, what is trying to do the realignment in eastern Ladakh, cultural, like you always find that when our Hindu cultural events are going to take place, there will be a lot of negative reporting against it. But for other religions, you will never find a negative reporting. Now, this is for disrupting. This is nothing else but plain create fissures, deepen the fissures, and create ruptures within the societal fabric. I won't take names. One person whom I know had written about the Dashera animal slaughter. So I told him I would have loved if you had written something similar about Bakrid. There's so much of animal slaughter. If you're saying that in this case, God would have been pleased long ago and there should not be animal slaughter, fine, I accept that. Why haven't you written anything about Bakrid? So he wrote a very tepid thing, but related it to the Old Testament and what was there in the Old Testament. So I
Hmm.
just laughed
Hmm.
and I said, thank you, I've made my case. While here you have been very nasty, there you have just mentioned that this is why it is done. Why? Why have you pulled your punches? Now it tells you so clearly who is paid to write what. Okay. Now, support to terrorists in the Northeast, they will try, but at the moment it is getting a bit tough for them on ground. But we can't let our guard down because that is the link. Currently, that is the link that we have to Southeast Asia. Because unfortunately, most of the South, except for Myanmar, which has got a big port, Sitwe and Kyokpo, which Chinese have made. Thailand has no port worth its name on the Bay of Bengal. It has got two small ports. Rest are all on bulk of their ports. When you have a look at
The
it,
other side.
are all on the towards the Pacific side. They are not
Hmm.
this side.
South
So
China
for
Sea side.
us, when we are doing our Act East, the road connectivity through the northeast going in through Myanmar and Thailand and down that is very critical. And that can get disrupted by two things. A is use of terrorists in the northeast, and B is use of the Rohingya terrorism in
Ah,
Rakhine, because that's the area through which you're going.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he would not be very happy that the Nagas are reworking the peace agreement and everything with India. I expect some more disruptions in that. All this is doing to what? To curb your rise. How? At the present moment, people are looking at West is looking at delinking from China.
Decoupling,
So,
Haji.
so decoupling is to take place, and
Ji.
especially now that Emperor Xi has come with full force in the garb of Mao. So obviously the Western companies will come under a lot of pressure. So they are going to move away from there, and there will be multiple hubs, which is the lesson from COVID. So they don't want any of the supply chains to come into India, because knowing fully well that within India would be one of the biggest hubs. There
Haji.
may be multiple hubs, but India, by virtue of its location in the Indian Ocean and by virtue of its size, population, and the kind of skills that you are able to generate and provide, would have. So this is going to be their biggest challenge.
Challenge.
And of course, like I said, other places internally, he is going to use Pakistan. Let there be no doubt. But these are all overt. Now let us look at the covert ones.
सर एक मिनट एक ये जो
Yeah,
कार्टोग्राफिक पॉइंट है सर यू नो
yeah.
फॉर द जनरल पब्लिक ये थोड़ा डिफिकल्ट है
कार्टोग्राफिक मतलब
आपने
okay,
नया मैप्स
कार्टोग्राफिक,
बोला हम्म,
yeah, map बना देता है. Like till 2006, he never showed Arunachal, the claim that he does, that is the North Arunachal, not southern portion of Arunachal, as southern Tibet. But after 2006, all his maps show that as southern Tibet. And his damming maps, what he's making for the hydropower projects, has also catered for areas in what he calls South Tibet, which is
yeah.
Arunachal. If you look at that map, these are the cartographic things that he does. claim lines keep changing. As his CNP increases, the claim line changes. This has happened because he felt that he was strong enough. Look at what he did with Nepal. He's just redrawn the boundary. Look at what
Hmm.
he's doing with Bhutan. Doklam, the issue is the Doklam issue that we talk about, the standoff. What it was at the pass, Dokala. That is the Doklam Plateau ka Dokala Pass. Doklam Plateau of Bhutan he has already occupied long ago, or around 7 8 or something, 2007 8. So cartographic are those issues which he does. Okay. What are the external string of pearls BRI? I don't need to tell much. Though BRI at the moment is facing tremendous headwinds, she has promised here that in the 20th Congress he will restart it. How is he going to restart it? Though he has now suddenly said he is going to give money to Pakistan, and Pakistan has gone running, the PM has gone running to China. I think the worry was more that had started leaning towards
America.
US. Salami slicing, as we know what he's been trying to do, and the standoff is going on in Eastern Ladakh. Three warfare strategy for anti-India narrative in the neighborhood. These are the external challenge. This is a diplomatic threat that he brings to your table. That look at the kind of anti-India narrative the population has, a sizable chunk of population, whether you look at Nepal, you look at Bangladesh, you look at Maldives, you look at Sri Lanka, these are all generated through his three warfares. He would fix elections in your neighboring states to make sure that an anti-India government comes in place.
Yes, sir.
The classic case is Sri Lanka, Rajapaksa, though now Ranil Wickremesinghe has come, but then he has the support of Rajapaksas. How much he will be balanced to make sure that his country survives the Chinese threat, I really don't know. Maldives is the classic case. Nepal is the
All
classic case which is going on. He tried a lot in Bangladesh. He didn't succeed at the moment. He tried with other your Myanmar and other places. He
Myanmar.
is not succeeding. Look at how Imran had to be booted out, though he burnt his bridges both sides. He burnt his bridges with the Americans, he burnt his bridges with the Chinese. So anyway, he had to go. No, they will not permit you enhance space in the international fora. Like your virulent, you could say, opposition to you getting into NSG,
NSG, UNSC.
UNSC, and then any proposal you take for his cat's paw violent on any technical this thing not to be declared a terrorist, especially the 2611 person. And I'm surprised that the Americans have and the American media have not been so vocal against the Chinese. So I'm hinting at certain things, it will build up. So this is aimed at inhibiting your multidimensional outreach, multi-domain and multi-dimension. And he will always use Pakistan as the cat's paw to keep you down. But the biggest concern today is the collapsing neighboring economies. And if the state collapses, then it's a direct threat. And the way the Pakistani political churning is going on, and the kind of support that Imran has, I'm surprised. See, I feel the way the Pak army made a mistake is they didn't realize that he's very, very, very radicalized. Imran is totally radicalized, and he has the support of the radical society, and the radical society is huge. Since 1986, you have been only teaching kids radical, whether it be madrasas or government schools. A very minute percentage go abroad and study in good schools. They don't have that,
सर
but this is what he's taught.
फौज को भी तो वही सिखाते हैं.
Yeah, so this is what everybody has been taught, and then obviously all those people are going to support him and not somebody else. So this is the price which they didn't realize that they're paying. But the worry is the collapsing of the state. What happens then? Because there is no money that has come in as yet. floods have affected them. There is no food, there is nothing available. But yet there are reports of him
Imran Khan.
expanding his nuclear footprint.
Hmm.
That means the money, that is whatever is coming from wherever, is going there and not for the people. When such a thing happens, then states do collapse. There is there's just that last straw on the camel's back which is left. And if that happens, then all these countries, most of these countries have common borders with us. So what happens across the border? What happens? Will there be a rush this side? How do you manage? What do you do? Though we have a border fence with Pakistan, what happens if they start coming in through the boats across? So these are cause for concern that we need to look at, and that is why I add as third front. All these come challenges, and never forget the covert threat from the West and the US. It's always reflective to planned narratives. Like, just imagine you are being feted in the UN for being a food exporter and looking after the global south. And hey presto, here comes the hunger index from some vague this entity in Germany, and puts you below even Pakistan and Bangladesh. I know it's all done with a purpose. It's a narrative to be built up by the money that they have given to various opposition parties. That this is not a pro-poor government, and they have taken away. This is not a pro-poor. They have taken away the food from your table and sent it to other countries. Okay,
The same,
Sim-
sorry, but same narrative वैक्सीन के टाइम पे भी चला था.
काफी चला था. See, attempts will always be made. It will always be made, and you know the newspapers, magazines, the media, and the politicians who make use of it to scream in that line. You know that they're going down that line.
Hmm.
You are being feted in the UN as being a leading, as a shining example of democracy, and lo behold, you come out with again a vague some company saying about security of the people, and you are so low, even below Syria and Afghanistan and Iraq on security of people. Hello, good morning. So these are all the narratives that are built up. See, the narrative was built up even when 2014 ki dar hai, and post truth when had started. And same thing is happening now when you say ki bhai, security of people is not there. That is leading to a similar sort of a narrative, because elections to various states and your uh, elections are coming. Essence being
Hmm.
that the current government, I'm not a BJP man or anything, but at least one thing that has happened is that he and the EAM have effectively been able to neutralize the pressures from the US and the West, and follow a path which they feel that serves the interest of India. So this is where they use NGOs, their own religious organizations, and give covert support to disruptive terror. Prime example, Pakistan. You claim that he is the font of terror. You claim he does everything. What do? A, you're giving him money to sustain his F-16s. You're permitting sale of used and refurbished F-16s to him. You have uh, taken him out of FATF. When you think that he is the main person, the font of global terrorism, you're taking him out of FATF, and you are working with IMF to give him his first tranche of money. Hello, something doesn't sound well. Everything is being done to curb your rise.
Ah.
The Before the unrestricted warfare came out of the Chinese, there was a book which came out, which was called Full Spectrum Dominance. It was written by a German. What the Americans use, which is, I would say, the manner in which the URV has also been, unrestricted warfare has also been given. Control of media, politicians, intelligentsia, social organizations, your students through scholarships, everything to control their narrative, so that you always look upon them. Cultural and historical disruptions. Your culture You will be made to hate your own culture.
It's not cool to be Indian. Hmm.
Yeah, your your history will be corrupted to say this was what it was. And everything is disruptive for your economic growth and for you to grow in become strong, a comprehensive national power, so that you continue to depend on them.
Ah,
And this will ensure a transatlantic dominance of the global order and other institutions in this century. Right? Again, I don't hold it against them because, again, like I said earlier, it is nothing surprising. Part of Kootaniti. Every strong country wants to continue to be strong and not let somebody else rise up. There are a number of statements which have now come on the Facebook and everything, which tells about the strength of your culture of Hinduism, that how strong you are. Okay, and written by, spoken of by not us, but people from the West.
correct, sir.
So again, I say we need to understand and we need to be aware of these things कि ये होगा, nothing surprising होगा. चलो इनको छोड़ देते हैं. This is their centers of gravity, military का है. So now how do you counter this challenge? So I've termed it towards an Akshay Bharat, that you undiminishing, you will never diminish thereafter. Countering the globalist challenge, a Sudrid, that means you're strong, Saksham, you're capable, Samrid, you're economically strong, and a Samrakshak, a net security provider in the
Provider.
region, Bharat. That is how you will become strong. Because only when you achieve the first three can you be a net security provider. A net security provider is not just military, it is multi domain. And when you
Multi-domain.
do that, the old concept of ours, that is when the old concept of ours becomes very effective. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That you don't do a China where you suck away the economy of other countries, but you let other people grow, so that the what the prime minister had said in 2018 in the Shangri-La dialogue, Sagar, security and growth for all in the
Growth
region.
for all.
Sagar. Okay. So now how do you counter? First and for all, we should understand that it is a multi-domain threat. So to coordinate all the multiple domains that are going to take place, you need a central coordinating authority.
Hmm.
And a CABSEC in the current structure cannot do it. So you should have the with the CABSEC, you need to have the CDS. Of course, that is a separate entity which I will discuss whenever Adi brings it up. That the CDS has to be operational control and not the administrative role that they have given him now. Sorry, the CDS, the External Affairs Minister, the DGNIA, all functioning under the PMO. They become the coordinating authority for this multi-domain threat. Then your NSCS and NSA, they are working today on a administrative order of the Prime Minister, make them a Parliament Act, a constitutional entity, and they would be tasked to enunciate your national security strategy. If you're hesitant to give out your national security strategy, an executive summary giving just a brief details can be left out in the open domain. What is necessary for the people to work on should be available, because you need one capstone strategic document from which everything else flows.
Flows.
Because
Hmm.
this, when you give your national security strategy, before, how does the national security strategy evolve? What is your vision? Where do you see your country 20 years hence or 30 years hence? Like, what is some vision they would have envisaged, that 100 years of independence? What do you want to achieve? What are the steps to achieve that? And your national security strategy lays down the strategy to achieve that first step, or subsequently when it comes out, how to achieve the second step.
Second.
From this, the national defense strategy is brought out. Please remember, the defense is not just military. Defense is also how to coordinate and ensure you are able to counter the internal threats: cyber, space, digital, media, everything. So, this is a national defense strategy of how you will go about it. Having done that, your Niti Ayog also needs to get expanded. Today, it is only covering the departments of the government. Sorry, your internal and external security experts also need to be part of it, to be able to oversee what kind of threats the policies will be there to execute. You, you just can't make a policy in isolation. They would be an issue in execution, and during that execution, what are the kind of threats that could come to it, and so how should the policy be framed to go it in a phased adaptive manner. So, like I said, the NSS is the capstone strategic document for all policies. NDS becomes the capstone document for enunciating your integrated military and internal security strategies. That's how you'll work together.
जी.
Then you have to make sure that your policies ensure the success of Atmanirbharta. Atmanirbhar Bharat cannot be just a statement. For that and for that vision, your policies have to be in tune with it. So the old policies of the 50s, 60s, some of them predate our independence also. All these need to be scrapped, and you got to bring in policies which are such that even the evolving scenario can be incorporated within that policy. So you must ensure your demographic, education, food, energy, economic, financial, and health security. Just a word about financial. Just the other day, the finance ministry was saying they're working towards digitizing of the rupee. You see, the printing of the money, also printing of your paper, the rupee currency costs money. Minting your coin costs money.
Hmm.
So it doesn't come free. It costs money. And then it has to be distributed, transported. That transportation costs are also there. And at every level, it needs to be distributed. So the government is looking at digitizing your currency. Okay. So now you got to make sure that that is not hacked and taken away from you. So these are futuristic policies that have to be worked at, and you cannot have generalists sitting for policies. It has to be dictated by the Niti Ayog, where the specialists sit, and the generalists should be left to execution and not be allowed to dictate policies unless he's an expert on it. You cannot have in the future world, when you're rising, generalists sitting on policies and saying this should be the policy. Sorry, you don't have the competence to give that. When you're Because even if you try to teach, it takes time to absorb the technologies. So you
True.
cannot do that. Okay. So this is what I had at the moment, this much. Now I throw it open, I leave it. I think we have covered about 45 minutes. I leave it now to the people to shoot questions.
Guys, that brings us to the point where please start shooting your questions. Sir has given a very, nice overview. ये क्या, what are the kind of threats हमको, what we face today. So let's start talking about specifics. As a matter of fact, काफी सारे uh, uh, thoughts are there. So, but एक चीज के ऊपर let's start talking about it is the anti-India narrative. आपने इसके बारे में hint भी किया था with your talk.
Yeah, see, the anti India narrative, like what the EM had also said, Washington Post, your New York Times, and sometimes your Wall Street Journal also, they'll take money and they will print an anti India narrative. whatever you do, it will be twisted and they'll make it anti-India. See, they don't want a very strong person in power here. I'm sure if this kind of interconnectivity was there during Indira Gandhi's time, she would have also faced a lot of negativity in a similar manner, because you're not listening to them. Even now, if you look at CNN is a totally paid media. They will never like they were again trying to, since they couldn't make any headway with the EAM, they were again after Hardeep Puri. He is also your petroleum minister, but then he gave it back to them full. See, uh, that their basic thing is that how are these Asian natives not listening to us? They have to listen to us, and if they don't listen, then the person in power has to have, if a particular person is there in chair and not listening to us, anything negative that you can publish about him, twist, turn, do anything, put in negative. That's it. That's the basic issue. The narrative will, while the politicians and certain scholars and intelligentsia will speak and say, ha ha ha, yes, 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 that, but the mainstream media will always carry your negative reports.
Hmm. That is true, sir. उसका तो कोई doubt नहीं है.
Yeah,
But इसका main जो the main thing that we see today, and guys, please let's start. आपके let's get your questions in English or Hindi. Either ways, it doesn't matter. We'll kind of do
देखो,
a mixed language affair with the question answer session.
2000 2014 के पहले इस तरह से नेगेटिव रिपोर्टिंग इतना ज्यादा आपका कभी हुआ था? नहीं हुआ.
सर
एक
2014
बार,
से पहले आप और हम ये बात भी नहीं कर पा रहे होते.
या नहीं नहीं, एक बार इसके पहले जब न्यूक्लियर एक्सप्लोजन किया था तब थोड़ा नेगेटिव रिपोर्ट आया था, बट वंस जसवंत सिंह एंड स्ट्रोट टैल्बर्ट, God bless their souls, they started talking, all negativity stopped. 1 to 3 agreement हुआ, they stopped. But उन्होंने ये सोचा था कि 1 to 3 के बाद सारे न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट उन्हीं को जाएंगे, उनको गए नहीं. Look at the brouhaha they did when they were expanding the Chennai ke paas the Kalpakkam nuclear reactor 3 and 4, which Russia was to make. And all those money you found came from their various NGOs to various people, और जैसे ही उन पे दबाव पड़ा सब बंद हो गया.
भाग गया उठ के.
बंद तो गया, अब सारा कुछ हो गया, बट कितना हो हल्ला हुआ था. That was because they were very clearly saying कि 1 to 3 हमने तुमको साइन करके दिया, तुमने हमको दिया नहीं. And the reason why India was saying is, तुमने तो जो तुम हमको बोल रहे हो लगा के दोगे, अपने ही देश में नहीं बनाया, मैं क्यों तुम्हारा गिनी पिग बनूं? They haven't made, since 73, the Americans have not made any new nuclear reactors. The only two countries which were doing new, and of course to some extent the Chinese, were the Russians and the French. ये उनका मेजर प्रॉब्लम था. तो नेगेटिविटी तो आएगा, कैसे नहीं आएगा?
Guys, let's start with the questions. And before I begin, yeah, please hit the like button, check your subscription, bell icons. You can visit the website, thedevtalks.com. And of course, yes, you can join the DevTalks community by becoming a member, or you can just send us a super chat or a super sticker to support our effort. Let's start as first thing. I think a half front is a misnomer. We've always had one front internally amongst Islamic fundamental notion of two nations from whatever external, whether Chinese or Western threat we have.
See, initially that's why I said initially it was only looked at, that was my first slide which I showed. They were only looking at the anti-terror threat and the anti-Naxal threat, and that is why the chatter used to be earlier of a two front threat, half front. They used to talk about it. But uh, because of the multi domain nature that is evolving, this threat that is evolving, that is why I felt that I should give it a third front per se. Because if it is only anti-terror in JNK or Punjab or the Northeast and some anti-Naxal where the police and all were doing a good job, uh, whatever they were capable of, this are not despite all those big hit instances which takes place, because you get negative report only about the big hit that has taken place. You never get the report about the good things that has already been done and sorted out, and it is because of them that you find today that it is where it is. It's not been a success. Otherwise, at one point in time, the red corridor ran all the way from Nepal and all the way down till Maharashtra and Andhra, right down till there. So it's all gone. The same is the case is the terrorism in the Northeast. So since it was not disrupting your way of life in other places, but this evolving threat that is coming out, multiple domain of cyber, of societal fissures, narrative battles, political battles, in every domain that you are touching, it impacts the way of your life.
Ah,
How? Like cyber threat for almost 3 4 hours, Mumbai electrical grid went out. So it affects your way of life. Everything came to a standstill. Your electric trains came to a standstill. The suburban trains are all electric there. So the grid goes, the electric trains comes to a standstill. It affects your way of life. That was only affecting a way of life in a limited place, but this has a footprint pan India.
all over. Hmm.
That is why I would not call that Islamic fundamentalist threat, which was there for terrorism in other places, as affecting your way of life, but this coupled with that impacts.
It's a full rounded affair, if I may.
Yeah.
Alpha says half front, it's a four front, believe me.
Oh, you're welcome to call it fourth front if you can divide the internal threats separately. I couldn't, and that's why I said you need one central controlling authority and all those things coming. The government structure has to change, it can't stay the same.
So he says this Pakistan, China, Kashmir, no peace yet, Arunachal, resistance fighters, Maoists, Adivasi, rising instability. Uh, I would have recommended you didn't say Adivasi, it's just a joke. Internal instability amongst communities, worst days ahead.
That's the narrative what the multi-domain threat wants to do. If you believe in that narrative, good luck.
That's the
Aren't you
beauty of the
commonly,
narrative.
aren't you going around commonly easily and doing your work? You are. Aren't you able to get food on your table? You are. Aren't these tribal communities able to go and do their work, whatever they are doing? They are.
Yeah.
Aren't they getting food on their table? They are. So this is a narrative. Okay. So we got to be careful. These are the type of narratives we will get. And I don't blame people who get carried away by these narratives, because everybody doesn't have the facility to go all the way out and check everything on place that
Research.
everything
Exactly.
is
Yes,
going
sir.
okay or not. So I don't blame anybody that there is a narrative, but we have to understand that these kind of narratives also exist.
So I think I'd add to one thing, sir. Before you form your opinions, please do some research. If nothing else, find out what's happening. You will get a completely different picture most of the time. So India is not a threat to Pakistan, but the two nation theory says India is no place for Muslims. By continuing to exist, we are an ideological challenge for Islamic fundamentalists out and in.
Mandhar, I would twist it a little bit. You see, you spoke about the two nation theory. So let's put a step back and give the devil the due. When we split into two nations, the complete central government and state government structures were available within India.
हाँ.
Pakistan had only provincial structures. They never had an overarching central structure. And that structure was provided to them by the army. Because to control the northwest frontier province, a large chunk of the army used to be deployed there, with their headquarters used to be based in Rawalpindi. And due to the Second World War, when it was taking place, they were spread out all over Pakistan. So the only central coordinating agency what was available was army. They made full use of that.
To
They made
control and
full
stabilize.
use of that, and today they control every aspect of their life in Pakistan. And if suddenly there is peace on both sides, they will lose out. Do go into a website called FaujiFoundation.org. That's
If
an
it's outside,
organization created by the Pak Army. All three
yeah.
services are there. You join the armed force from home. If you keep quiet and just go about and let others do what they do, from home to tomb, you're looked after. The day you retire, you go into one of the establishments of Fauji Foundation. It is such a huge foundation. It was made from the money that was repatriated for the soldiers who had fought in the First and Second World War. In India, that money was distributed to all the people who had fought. Their NOK, if they were dead, their NOK, and everybody got that money. Pakistan did not do that. They created a central corpus, and from there started the Fauji Foundation. And today, every commercial activity it does in Pakistan. So it cannot have good relations with India. Number two, we must never forget people who voted for Pakistan were from UP Bihar area,
Yeah.
not the Pakistan Punjab. Please. Pakistan Punjab, Muslim League had lost the elections. Now, when these people went, Pakistan Punjab took over control because most of them were there in the army. They took control, and all these people who have gone there have hardly any say in the matters of functioning of Pakistan. They are called muhajirs,
Muhajirs.
right? So Pakistan is, again, it's a problem of lack of identity.
है कौन पता नहीं.
Yeah, lack of identity, because they
जो पैसे
changed
देता
and
है वो हो
they
जाते हैं
would
सब.
not do anything about the historical ruins that were available, archaeological ruins that were coming out. And if you link yourself to the Arabs who came to Sindh, well, then what about the other people there? You link yourself to Turks, you link yourself to Mongols. So you have no link with the archaeological history of your land.
Of your land.
So, so you have a huge case of identity crisis.
Prices.
Who are you? That's the question. So
True, sir.
it's very easy to get into religious fundamentalism. So you forget about your land, you forget about everything. You're part of the Islam Ummah, and that you can relate yourself to because it has nothing to do with the land that you are located in.
You need some answers in life, so
Yeah.
yeah. हम सामान्य गांव के लोग इस समस्या को कैसे खत्म करने में भाग ले सकते हैं?
अपना काम सही ढंग से करो शिवम, सब कुछ ठीक हो जाएगा। सब ठीक चल रहा है, लोगों के बहकावे में मत आओ और अपना काम करते रहो। हम भी अपना काम करते रहते हैं, किसी के बहकावे में नहीं आते। हम में जो क्षमता है हम उसको काम करते हैं, बस।
Indeed, sir, there's actually सबसे अच्छा solution है. So this is part one of two questions, sir. Just one point I want to make, sir. In 1999, the Pakistani army deployed over 30,000 soldiers with an aim to block NH 1A. This exercise brought a strategic setback for Pakistan along with the economic downfall. Part 2 says today blocking NH1A can be achieved by, say, 50 Indians, 5 Indian flags, 3 Gandhis, 2 Ambedkar pictures, and with media's backing.
It's not so easy. Let me tell you, it's not so easy. He, you're
But the
right. He
broader
did.
point that he's making, sir, which
Yeah,
is pretty significant.
yeah. Uh, that is what I said. Creating fissures within the society, using narratives. Your fifth column is reflexive control. Okay. Now the classic case, two very classic case of reflexive control and narrative management was seen in is seen in NRC, CAA, and of course the farm laws and the farm laws.
Wow.
Okay. If you read carefully and if you ask them what it is that you are against, which I did with a few people whom I
They
know
have
from
no idea.
Punjab, they cannot answer. They cannot answer. Same is the case with CAA and same is the case with NRC.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is narrative. How you bring in reflexive control through a narrative control, controlling the narrative. And with the paid media and the paid intelligentsia, they just hype it up, and it becomes very difficult in that cacophony and that din to get your point across of what is right and what is wrong. They don't listen. Okay. As far as your first point is concerned, he did make an attempt. He was not successful. It was not full NH. It was he was looking at just the link to Siachen, just that part beyond Zojila. I was my unit had was deployed there. We were providing the firm base for the attacks on Tololing and Tiger Hill, and we were controlling all traffic coming through the Zojila Pass and moving forward. His aim was actually the heights that he had occupied, dominated that stretch of the highway going to Leh. So basically, Zojila to Leh, that was what he wanted to dominate, and that if it gets cut off, then he will be able to capture uh, Siachen. That
Hmm.
was his aim. But he didn't listen to logic, and he was blinded. This is what happens when strongmen come there and you don't do an assessment. What we in the Forge term it as appreciation. You do all your appreciation at the higher level also, not at the tactical level. What would be the responses? What are the various contingencies that could come into play? He didn't realize the level of response by the Indians. He didn't. Uh, See, I'm from the Armored Corps. We were deployed in the CI grid with the tanks mothballed and kept in the plains. We went into the mountains and we deployed there. We made all the bunkers and everything and we deployed there. So he lost very badly out there, and he didn't realize that the Americans would be not supporting them. He thought the Americans were with them. And the biggest giveaway was what was achieved by our int, where we taped the conversation
Ah,
between him in China and the chief of general staff
in
in
Pakistan.
Pakistan. And
Musharraf.
that was played out to the American ambassador. Okay. When he tried to sell that only we are not involved and only the militants are involved.
हम तो
So
है ही
that
नहीं.
so that but as far as the economy was concerned, the downslide had already started before that.
Hmm.
The downslide, if you look at all the indices that they had, the moment the Americans withdrew, when the Soviet Union withdrew from Afghanistan, the downslide started from there,
Hmm.
because they earlier they used to get the money from the CIA for whatever they were doing. That money stopped.
Stopped.
The Pressler Amendment came into play. Okay, the
Yes.
money stopped, but they still continued with that same thing that they were doing with the same fervor. So the
And they
economy
lost a lot in the
started.
bargain.
So the economy started sliding from there. एंड आफ्टर दिस तो बिल्कुल ही खत्म हो गया था.
खत्म हो गया सर.
बाय देन धीरे 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 वो स्लाइड शुरू हो गया था. And yes, so that is why we need to be careful about narratives and how you go about it.
I think the internal backlash theory will be defeated as long as India symmetrically threatens Pakistan with retaliation for terror attacks.
That we have already done. That's why I said that earlier he was talking of a strategic gap from the time the sub-conventional went to conventional, where India would intervene.
Hmm.
But there was a gray zone of conventional, and India reacted in that gray zone of conventional both against Myanmar, the NSC and K, and twice against Pakistan. And suddenly you
True.
realize that Pakistan has suddenly realized that his bluff has been called.
Called. The
And
escalation ladder switched hands.
yeah, now he has no response to this.
हाँ
When he
जी, हाँ
tried
जी,
to show a response, वो तो show किया था, और in the bargain he lost an F-16.
जी.
And he suddenly realized that his bluff has been called. Right? But my concern is different. My concern of internal problem is this economic collapse that has taken place. How long can you carry on like this? At some point in time, the public inside Pakistan, I personally feel all these people are coming with the Imran Khan. Maybe 20-30% are ideologically inclined with him, but the balance of them would be those people who are frustrated. Yeah, कि खाने को कुछ नहीं है, बिजली नहीं है, पानी नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है, चलो यही शायद कुछ कर दे.
तुम F-16 ले रहे हो.
Yeah.
Indeed, sir. What about the drug menace emanating from the neighborhood and creeping slowly all throughout the country, targeting mainly our students? This dangerous scenario is not now coming into the picture.
Let me say that this scenario had always been there. It's now coming into prominence because we are now able to track this thing and capture it. We have always been talking, even when I was young in the 80s, of the
Drug menace.
golden sickle and the golden triangle, and the golden crescent. The golden sickle or golden triangle was in the northeast,
Yeah.
emanating from Thailand, Myanmar, and all these places. That was that area. And the golden crescent was always Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and all these places.
Yeah.
So it had always existed. It came into prominence because it suddenly struck the people in Punjab that how their people were getting affected. A very hardworking lot, huh? Punjabis. I have commanded Khalsa troops and all. Very hardworking people. But the youth was getting affected.
True.
Not ready to work. Not ready to do hard labor. See, this is what, and there's nothing, this is in society, it happens. When you are not that well off, you are just about okay, you will find young also doing hard work to do well in life, to earn more. When their kids and grandchildren realize कि आराम से पैसे आ रहे हैं, there's somebody else, like people from the Bimaru states used to come and do all the labor for them. So he's earning money without labor. Now they're not coming.
He has
He
to do
has
it
to
on his
do.
own.
But when he was not doing it, तो शराब और ये सब में धुत थे. तो ये तो menace तो है. I agree that this is a problem, but this is a problem. It is not spread all over. There's a high, very high, very rich society and the very poor society. These two are affected in a very big way, in the sense that the very rich, they have nothing to do in life, they don't work much,
No
money
purpose.
available हो जाता है, मम्मी पापा को टाइम नहीं होता है, so they get into this menace. The lower one does it because he has not got much to eat, so he takes drugs to overcome his hunger.
To sleep.
Overcome his hunger. A lot of them, the babies, since the mother is also working, थोड़ा सा भांग या ड्रग चखा देती है बच्चे को कि सोता रहेगा, तंग नहीं करेगा, मैं काम कर सकती हूँ. ओके, सो ये तो था. अभी थोड़ा थोड़ा निकल के आ रहा है कि मिडिल इनकम वाले बच्चे भी इफेक्ट हो रहे हैं. And that is where I come to the attack on your culture.
Culture.
Moment you culture gets attacked, you lose identity. Then you try to keep up with the Joneses ki wo bhi karta hai to main bhi karunga.
Hmm.
So your education security, your cultural security is a very important thing for people to retain identity. When they retain identity, I don't say that people will still not get entrapped, but the number of people who get entrapped will be less.
Much less. So the predatory proselytism is a major issue in the South, with Western evangelicals trying to replicate what they did in the Northeast. New converts in the South are openly spewing venom against India. And he
Yeah.
continues and he says, recently the Speaker of Tamil Nadu State Assembly, who is a Christian, had said on record that Coimbatore bomb blast was staged by NIA, and it's the NIA who trained Jamisha Mubin to do the IED. So I want to add
I
one thing.
hmm,
It's to this entire game. This the blast itself in Tamil Nadu. If you look at it, it's more of a messaging rather than a damage.
the
Is that how
blast
will
was
you look
not
at
a
it?
messaging. The
Hmm.
blast was that they didn't make the IED properly, so it exploded.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Nobody does a blast to kill himself. So it was not made properly and it exploded. See, the South, especially Tamil Nadu, the Dravidianism is here in a big way.
Hmm.
The term Dravidian was brought in by the West, by the British. And they brought in that the Aryan invasion and the Dravidians went out. So the North and South are different. Nonsense. Even Kamal Hassan made a statement that they were not Hindus and then he had to make a
Back.
hasty retreat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not too worried about this, whatever statement that speaker has made. I hope you know the first evangelism and proselytization took place in Kerala. And along with that came the Moplas. The Mapile is called Moplas, who is the Muslim.
Correct, sir.
Today, the biggest supporters of Hinduism in Kerala are the Christians, because they've suddenly realized that they supported the Muslims in such a big way that the radicalization that has taken place there is a threat to them. So these people have not realized the problem. That apart, this is what I was saying. This is the internal security threat. When I said that the covert thing, if you take your mind back, can we get that up? That
हाँ सर.
threat from the covert threat, पीछे जाते हैं. Yeah, yeah. See number 3, religious organizations. Religious organizations, I just left it at that. That is proselytization. And they haven't given it in the Northeast. There were a few Germans and Swedish and others who have been caught, who come in a tourist visa and do
अभी निकाले
proselytization.
हमको.
Right? They got caught, about 14 of them. And I'm sure there'll be a whole lot of them sitting here in Tamil Nadu. It's for the state government to do this, no?
Yeah, yeah.
It's the state government there, Himanta Biswa Sarma, who got after them and got this done. Will Stalin do it? So
Big
that
question,
is
sir.
where it comes. Control of media, politicians, full spectrum domination. Please read that. Control of media, politicians, intelligentsia, social organizations. You see, uh, the thing that is sold to them is how to win their elections. Because the politicians across the board, everywhere in the world, are more interested in ensuring that they retain their seat. They
Obviously,
get to
yes,
the
sir.
seat and retain their seat.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
चल इसको हटा दे यार.
Yes.
They are more interested in gaining the seat and retaining the seat. उसके साथ तो even if he has to sell him soul to the devil, he'll do it. Yeah. Doesn't make a difference to him.
That is the game, sir.
Yeah. So that is the internal challenge that I'm saying. That's why it's a third front.
So why do you think our media and politics is easy to buy for these foreign disruptive
It's not
influences?
just ours, everywhere. Look at how the Chinese have bought off the medias in Pakistan, in US and the
US
West. They're running their own illegal police stations out there, which they have suddenly come to know.
with
Everyone does it,
uniform,
yeah.
with uniform, sir. They wear
Yeah.
that police logo and all that, right?
Okay. So it's very easy. Money, lure of the lucre, avarice. Look at the pilots, retired pilots of the West, British,
Yeah. I
the
mean,
Germans, the
Americans.
Australian. There is an American. Each of them is being paid 20,000 US dollars a month. Okay. And that's when you take the conversion rate of yuan, and he'll be having very easy living out there. Look at the saving that he's doing. That's why he sold his soul and gone there, despite his country saying calling them as a threat. So it's common everywhere. There'll be some ideological, there'll be some with money, there'll be some who will be honey trapped.
True.
Simple. Sam dam dand bhed. Okay. Never forget that. That is how the uh, people are subverted also.
Absolutely, sir. Sir, it's absolutely correct. The full spectrum dominance shows how hypocrite the United States is. They always want the big to be the big brother of their former colonies.
They are not our we were not their colony. No, see, I won't say hypocrite. This is the way he wants to dominate the world island. If you look at the globe, there is a world island, which is the Eurasian landmass and Africa. They are interconnected. And then you have immediate islands, that is the British hai, your Philippines hai, your Japanese islands hai, all these islands, your Brunei, Indonesia. So neighboring islands are Sri Lanka, Seychelles, and then you have outlying, which is the Americas, which is at a distance away, quite some distance away. Okay. Now, if he has to dominate here, he has to dominate this place.
Hmm.
How does he dominate? Having a footprint in Europe, having something in uh, North Africa per se, and having a footprint in Asia, and controlling these seas for the movement of his trade. So he has to do that. That's how he does it. He doesn't like us because we have now charted, we have become strong economically, we are militarily strong, diplomatically, we have become strong, and we are charting our own path. That if it suits my interest, I will look up to you. If it suits my interest, I will work with Russia. Thank you. That you can't dictate to me who I relate to. Period. सो अब यूएस तो करेगा यार. हमने रंगरा ये उसको लेके आए थे ना, क्या नाम था, राजन,
Raghuram
कि
Rajan,
रघुराम राजन, आरबीआई.
CIA agent था वो तो.
ना 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 ना. How many of you know that in the beginning of the at the end of the 20th century, beginning 21st century, 20 economists of US had joined, and they called themselves the Super 20 to chart a path to ensure the economic and technological dominance of US in the 21st century. And Raghuram Rajan is one of the founding members of that. Right? Having finished the job in RBI, he had applied for the same thing in UK, and UK didn't give him that job. ठीक है. सो हम हाँ 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 कर देते हैं, अरे यूएस चला गया, इतना बड़ा हो गया. गुड. अच्छा बड़ा हो गया, अच्छी बात है यार, बट वो तो यूके का है या यूएस का है यार, उनका सिटीजन
जी।
है. He will work for them. He is not going to work for you. He is the only retired RBI governor who doesn't stay in India. क्यों नहीं है?
Right from Manmohan Singh, Bimal Jalan, everybody is here
सब
only.
सब यही है, वही एक बंदा है जो नहीं है,
बाहर
क्योंकि
रहता
वो
है,
आपका था ही नहीं. ओसीआई बना दिया था उसको, उसी कार्ड से आया, बना और चला गया.
उसी कार्ड से गायब हो गया वो.
हाँ, वो चला गया. एंड सडनली नाउ कहता है कि वी शुड नॉट फॉलो द चाइनीज मॉडल. हेलो, व्हाई शुड आई नॉट डू मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यार, ओनली सर्विसेज करता रहूंगा. So you see, he wants to undermine your make in India. Yeah.
Such veiled threats, sir. In a way, we are
No.
disadvantaged as a democracy. The front side of India is taking advantage of the front side. The front inside
Front
India is taking
inside
advantage
India.
of the democracy and doing everything that can harm the country. The West and East are both plotting against us. I'd like to
Yeah.
add a
West is
question
also a
to.
democracy, Michael. The West is also a democracy, and they are dominating the world. So how do you say democracy is at a disadvantage?
Yeah,
I don't buy that.
we have fissures.
Yeah, we have our internal fissures which we need to manage.
This is interesting. So, one-sided covering of the Ukraine war shows how they're using the full spectrum dominance.
Yeah, but you see, the Ukraine war itself, when you use a particular strategy, there is an expiry date for that strategy. And so that strategy has met its expiry date long ago. Now,
खत्म हो
hardly
गया.
anyone believes anything that the West says. That lies, lies, and more lies. So nobody believes them what they say. So there is an issue. So always you have to remember that when you start with a strategy, in such a case like narrative, as long as the events can be correlated to your narrative, that narrative
Exactly.
stands. If the events don't correlate to your narrative, then that a narrative collapses. And you have, that is why the narrative is a very dynamic thing. You have to be on your feet to keep modifying that narrative to keep in pace with the unfolding events, which has not happened. So now today, after 8-9 months, nobody believes what the West says. कि हाँ थोड़ा बहुत होगा यार, अपना बड़ा चढ़ा के कहते हैं. So that is the
मिर्ची मसाला
problem.
लगा दी.
They have attempted a full spectrum, but without realizing the backlash.
Indeed,
The economic sanctions on Russia has not harmed Russia as much as they felt it would.
it would.
Not that it has not affected, yes, it has, but not as much. But it has damaged Europe's economy completely. And my reading is they have gone back at least a decade. They have fallen back a decade. They have nothing left. The coffers are empty. Their stockpile of weapons are empty. Everything is empty.
Except the gas
कैसे?
that they bought on 4 times the rate. That's all.
Yeah, but the gas खरीदेगा कैसे? आम
वो
आदमी
खरीद
के
लिया ना
पास
वो
पैसे
उसने.
नहीं है खरीदने के लिए ना.
हाँ, वो अलग है.
तुम गैस भर के रख दो, लेकिन कॉस्ट, अब तुमने तो वैसे ही खरीदा उसको 4 times द रेट, मार्केट रेट. उससे तुम अब वो ट्रांसपोर्टेशन चार्ज, ये चार्ज, वो चार्ज लगा के आम आदमी को तो 5 to 6 times द रेट में जाएगा.
हाँ हाँ.
उसके पास तो वैसे ही वाट लगी हुई है, पैसे नहीं है. अब वो खाना खाएगा कि ये करेगा? ही कांट.
It's terrible. And एक और चीज सर, नैरेटिव का एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग का वो है, जो ये कंप्लीट कंट्रोल ऑफ नैरेटिव होता है, दैट आल्सो गोस साइडवेज बिकॉज़ यू बिकम
Yeah,
एरोगेंट एंड
you
इग्नोरेंट एज
no,
अ मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट.
correct. No, that's why I was saying the arrogance comes in कि मैं पूरा
Yeah.
कंट्रोल कर रहा हूं, but the event you are not controlling.
The
It's a
ground
two-sided
events.
event. So
Yeah.
ground event
Yeah.
you are not able to control. When the
Yeah.
the event don't match what you're saying, then what do you do? Then what do you do?
So for decades they've left NGOs to do whatever inside India, and the effects which are seen now We already know the strategic blunders.
I agree with you, Bala. These have been huge strategic blunders, but the course correction has started. I think almost 30 or 60,000 NGOs have shut shop. Okay. And the FCRA has not been given. Can you imagine? Rajiv Gandhi Foundation and the Indira Gandhi Foundation have not got the FCRA clearance because they took money from China and they've not declared the money. So the FCRO extension has been blocked. So with effect from 1st of October, they don't have FCRA. They can't take foreign money.
Hmm.
And most of the NGOs had been told that as per the FCRA laws of India, you have to get it audited. Those who got it audited, got their FCRA clearance. Those who didn't get it audited went. And the classic case is the think tank Brookings.
Brookings.
They've changed the name, some center for something,
Center
CP something, Center for Peace and some
policy something.
policy and something,
Policy and
policy
research.
research,
Yeah.
policy and research or
CPRI.
something.
CPRI. CPRI.
Yeah. Center for Policy Research Institute. They can't. So when
That's
you
a
can't,
Democratic Party funded think tank in India.
yeah. Then similarly, Ford Foundation is facing a huge threat.
Soros.
So the work has started. That is why I was saying ना कि ये NGO, they use these NGOs. NGOs का और कोई काम ही नहीं है. क्लासिक केसेस तीस्ता सेटलवाद फंस गई, राणा अयूब भी फंस गई. ये जो पैसे उसके अकाउंट में आए हैं वो जो बताया है कि आए हैं, बाकी पता नहीं बाहर कौन से अकाउंट खोल रखे होंगे जहां पैसे आए होंगे.
वो तो रहती बाहर है सर.
दाएं
वो
बाएं
इंडिया
से.
में कहाँ रहती है
या
वो?
या हाउ डू यू अफोर्ड यार? somebody has given you money, that's how you're staying there. कहां से आए वो? So that is the way people do. And nothing surprising, like I mentioned, this is part of कूटनीति. We have forgotten our चाणक्य. हम क्या करें? हमको भी करना चाहिए. हम क्यों रो रहे हैं कि वो कर रहा है? तुम भी करो यार. किसने रोका है तुमको?
एक ये चीज सर पूछनी है. आई मीन एंड हमारा कोई इंटरनेशनल आउटपुट नैरेटिव आउटलेट नहीं है. कतार, इफ यू
अरे
लुक एट
यार
इट, हैज thought of it very
हम अपना
very
बिल्कुल ही
strategically.
अपने अंदर बैठ के खुश हैं. Like I was in my last talk, I had said, you can't defend by sitting inside. You have to go out.
Out.
Like if I am told, let us say I am told, what is the Fauj doing? Guarding Delhi? क्या मैं दिल्ली में बैठा हूँ? I'm sitting on the frontiers, no? Why?
Yes.
So that when I fight, Delhi can function automatically अपने तरह से. उसी तरह से अगर ये पूरे देश का मैंने सिक्योर करना है तो मैंने तो बाहर कदम रखना है. बाहर कदम रखना है तो आई हैव टू, we have a term in the army which is called shaping the battle space. So in this domain it is called shaping the environment, and which is where these narratives come. And like I already warned, narratives, you have to be, it's very dynamic, it's not static. You got to keep twisting and modifying these narratives so that it flows from one to the other logically. These twists and flows in the narrative has to flow logically. You can't have narrative A and then going to narrative B. Then you have lost face. Then they will say कि यार इसको पता नहीं क्या है. So A goes to A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, and then from there leads on to B. ठीक है. So हमें ये करना है. हमारे एनजीओस क्यों नहीं है बाहर? जिस देश से हमारे पास एनजीओ आए हैं उनको बोलो हम रेसिप्रोसिटी, हम भी रखेंगे एनजीओ वहां पे. सो दैट इज व्हाट वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड. मे बी व्हेन वी वर नॉट दैट रिच, we brought these NGOs, the money came and we felt that they will do something for the society, being naive, little realizing that society के साथ और क्या कर सकते हैं.
True.
Instead of getting them as NGOs, we should have asked them to give us money controlled by us, and we placed our NGOs organizations on ground. Then you would have controlled the narrative.
Narrative.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry, wrong comment. We have seen government's laid back attitude to address false narratives. Do you think the Ministry of INB and is up to the ante? What measures we can take as citizens?
See, the first thing to control the narrative is to control the media space, the electronic space. Okay. And unless you get the control of the electronic space and the printed space, you can keep making any narrative, it becomes difficult. Controlling that narrative cannot from directly from the government. Also remember that. Because then the people, when they are listening to it, they'll say, yaar, ye apna
Government
patta
propaganda.
theek, this is government propaganda. So you have to control. The job is to control the intelligentsia, your media, your people to put across your narrative so that your narrative is put across out there, so that it is intelligently placed in the open domain in all languages of India,
Yeah.
so that it reaches a wider mass. You and I get to know about these narratives which are there in the English domain. मैक्स हमें थोड़ा बहुत हिंदी का पता लग जाएगा, बाकी जगह क्या नैरेटिव फैल रहा है हमें पता है. रीजनल लैंग्वेज नैरेटिव, वो भी आपको चाहिए लोगों को कंट्रोल करने के लिए. मैक्सिमम जो इनका नैरेटिव वेस्ट से शुरू होता है, मैक्सिमम इंग्लिश में आता है,
Hmm.
उसके बाद हिंदी में जाता है. अभी थोड़ा बहुत यहाँ तमिल लिटरेचर में शायद आ रहा होगा. सो दैट इज द वे इट इज. दैट्स हाउ यू कंट्रोल. इट हैज टू गो डाउन to the regional languages also. That's how you control a narrative. So how the information, that's why I said that the whole structure of governance, the model has to change to be able to counter the future threat. Sitting in Delhi, the information and broadcasting ministry, can it do anything? I don't think so.
It
It
has to
can
be a whole
control
of.
the, yeah, it has to be a whole of country approach, whole all states, involvement of all states. You have a federal structure. Where your own party is in power, they would listen to you. Other places, will they listen to you? They won't. They have their own narrative to propound, so that local party head continues in the chair. So you cannot stay with those old antiquated structures. There has to be some other structure which works quietly. So structures have to be made, and so I made one attempt to create some structure. If we can start debating on these issues, then I feel it'll be worthwhile. Present structures won't work.
There's also another thing, and I think a lot of the viewers feel that it's a very pessimistic position to be in. Let me remind everybody one bright spot, and may I take this 1 minute from you, sir?
Yeah, yeah, please,
That,
please,
you
please.
know, till the COVID year, 2020, we remember that when articles used to come out or write-ups used to come out in the Washington Post, in the New York Times, in the Wall Street Journal, and the New York Post, and the Los Angeles Times, and so on and so forth. It used to create headlines within India, and you would have evening debates, firing, shouting, this, that, ye, wo, all that stuff. In the past 2 years, what is developed is a society that has understood that there is an anti-India narrative which is coming across. So your question, when you talk about Varun, when you talk about what measures we can take as citizens, I think the measures have already started to come into place where the citizenry of this country is today saying, listen, here we need to analyze why. There was not a time where we asked the question why, sir.
No,
Correct me if I'm wrong.
not only why, don't just, we used to early blindly follow. I still remember in the late 70s when I was commissioned in early 80s, the first thing in the morning to listen to news, we used to tune to BBC radio में.
Yeah, yeah. Today, I mean, BBC.
अर्ली मॉर्निंग शेव करके पीटी में जाना होता था. यू आर लिसनिंग टू द बीबीसी न्यूज एंड यू यूज्ड टू शेव. You had faith. Today you realize that how fake they all are. I don't say that the news is not good. But today, as a citizen of India, you have to realize that you have to take multiple sources to find out actually where what the news is. No paper, no channel today across the board gives you facts. They each of the news reader gives their opinion which the editor has given about the fact. The fact is buried somewhere within that. So when you read multiple newspapers, net pe easily available ho jata hai, and hear multiple channels, then you are able to arrive at कि यार अच्छा शायद कुछ ऐसा हुआ था. You will still not know it. There'll be a gray zone, but that gray zone which is there becomes very small, so you'll be somewhere close by. That is what you need to do, and not blindly accept just because it has been published by Wall Street Journal
Yeah,
or Stratfor or New York Times. Na, दूध का कोई धुला नहीं है.
indeed. Two-part question, sir. I think it's about time India needs to start building its own social media platforms and restrict American ones, because they are a perfect tool for regime change operations. And also, newer tools like Starlink should have restricted, also have to be restricted, because look at what the USA has done in Ukraine and within the Iran protests.
See, Iran protests, I won't link it too much to Starlink. It was ripe for protest. All said and done, the manner in which they have handled women has been very regressive. And that is one thing which I would say that both UAE and Saudi Arabia realized it and started giving space to the women. Okay, Iran has not given that space, so it had to happen at some time. It happened. Yes, once it has happened, then बहती गंगा में कई लोग हाथ धो लेते हैं उसमें, and
Why
then the
not?
funds start flowing.
Why not? I mean,
Yeah, yeah. And
why not?
these people are very anti the uh, people in power in Iran
Yeah,
because they invaded their embassy. Let's not forget, any embassy or high commission area in a country is the sovereign land of that country, not
country.
the country where it is located, the country whose embassy is. It was attacked and people were held hostage. So
1979.
that's an act of war.
Yes.
Okay, so let's not forget what was done. Number two, yes, we need, it has started up in some manner. So the new laws and other things are being brought in. Will Starlink be given space over India? India has already lodged a protest that it cannot be given such space because the space for location of your own satellites is limited. There is a finite location in space where you can place satellites. You just can't place satellite anywhere and everywhere. Ki bhai, next day you think you will go. So the objections have already started coming against Elon Musk on his Starlink of 3,000 odd satellites that he wants to place. People have already said, two fingers, we're not going to give you that slots because the slots belong to various countries. So he's not going to get that. And I think that is the reason why he has realized that, and that is the reason why he has gone to Twitter to be able to manage. Okay,
Control something.
control something. स्टारलिंक यूरोप के ऊपर उन्होंने दे दिया जगह. अब कितना बढ़ता है, लेट्स हैव अ लुक. And it's a double edged, and yes, social media platform is the biggest threat for controlling the narrative any which way you want. So you do need, and that is the reason why China has blocked off all these things inside their own country,
Yep.
and they have their own equivalent
Social media
of
platform.
Twitter, own equivalent of WhatsApp, own equivalent of Instagram, TikTok. उसी में से निकला TikTok, which has become so viral the world over. Okay, which is banned in India now, though I still get on Facebook because it is not banned the world over. Facebook still keeps giving you TikTok videos. So social media, yes, I entirely agree with you. It's a big threat of how the negative use of the social media, how it can affect, especially in a multicultural, multi-religion, multi-caste social fabric of India, where you can do a lot of damage. So
True, sir.
controls, I think the talk is already on. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, the MP, has laid out what all they are going to do to control the social media. So Twitter has faced the music. Meta will also. Google has also 13
Google.
close to 1400 crores damages they have had to pay. So countries have started. गूगल पे के ऊपर उसको पकड़ लिया है. ऐड तो आता रहता है गूगल पे, सब चलता है. अभी बंद कर दिया. गूगल पे
बंद कर
has
दिया था.
halted. Google Pay has halted because they were not accepting UPI, which is India's. So they've been told to get lost. So yes, the government has started work. We as a society also need to understand that blindly WhatsApp यूनिवर्सिटी को मत बिलीव करो. ठीक है. लर्न टू डिसर्न कि क्या सही है क्या गलत है,
Yeah.
क्या ट्विस्ट किया गया हो सकता है.
धन्यवाद सर, आप दोनों बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं. आपका लगाया पौधा मजबूत भारत की नींव में एक महत्वपूर्ण ईंट साबित होगा, बिल्कुल बरगद की तरह. जय हिंद जनरल साहब.
जय हिंद, जय हिंद. थैंक यू सो मच. बहुत धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
Will the Ukraine war degrade Western capability of projecting wars and narratives in the medium to long term around the globe?
I have no doubts. यार, if you, it's the story of the boy shouting wolf. Who will believe you now? You just tell me. If Zelensky comes and tells me tomorrow कि नहीं नहीं ये रशियंस ने ऐसा किया था, या वो ईरान ये बोल रहा है ऐसा करने वाला है, you think I'll believe him? Who will believe him? Same with the Western media. They can keep screaming. I don't believe a word of what comes out in the Western media. I have access to RT also. I don't believe a word of everything what they say. I don't
Yeah.
believe a word of everything what they say. I listen to multiple sources, read from multiple sources, and arrive at my conclusion. And that is what my aim is to tell you all today. Please do that. Don't believe one source. In today's world of narrative warfare, समझने के लिए आदि ने आर्टिकल लिखा है, फाइनेंशियल एक्सप्रेस में पब्लिश हुआ है ना.
Yes, sir.
पढ़ो उसको. हाउ नैरेटिव वॉर्स आर फॉट. पढ़ो उसको, समझो, और फिर अपने आप में देख, गरेबान में झांक के देखो कि क्या मैं ये गलती कर रहा हूं कि ब्लाइंडली किसी की बात सुन ले रहा हूं. मत सुनो.
Thank you for the mention, sir. And last question for the evening, gentlemen and ladies, if there are few watching at this late of the hour, let's take it. Subhash Rana says, has Indian polity, that is the party politics and politicization of issues in the national building is concerned, come of age as far as international arena is concerned? Is it how mature enough to play?
Yeah, we are maturing. See, there is a wonderful book written by Paul Kennedy, Rise of Fall of Nations. Okay, Empires he had called it.
Yeah.
80s में लिखा था. 80s, I think 85 or 87 he had written that book. And it's a beautiful chart which he says it's a 400-year cycle. It's 100 year to rise, 100 year you're on top, 100 years you're declining, and then 100 years you are at the bottom. And then the circle starts again. Okay. So that's a rough estimate that he had arrived at and worked at. हम कितने, as a nation, when we have started, in the term as nation state is used in the Western lexicon, 75 साल ही हो रहे हैं यार. 25 साल और हैं उठने के लिए और ऊपर जाने के लिए. And you're rising. You've reached the fifth economy. You have a very strong army, which the Chinese are also very scared of. Let me put it bluntly. They're shit scared of that you can do something. You're becoming so strong economically that he is most worried now. That is, narrative has gone down the drain. Party and politics aside, the people of India have understood that yes, we are something, uh, and we have achieved something. When you see the development work over these 70-75 years that have taken place, the way the country has developed, the way your roads are developing, the railway lines have come up, your air travels have, since the 90s when you opened up, how the air travel has developed, how many passengers are traveling by air. I personally don't remember when I last traveled by train. Yeah,
Hmm.
must have been about 20-25 years ago. So people who were going by bus are going by train. A lot of people who traveled by train are going by plane, because cheaper airlines have also started coming in, budget airlines.
Udan.
And Udan has also come in. No, I'm saying before Udan, the budget airlines had come in.
Yeah, it
You
was
could
still
afford,
pretty low.
so
Yeah.
you could afford to travel in that.
Hmm.
So the you are that, it is showing. And now that you have reached a cusp after 75 years, at the international arena you're getting recognized कि हाँ यार, इस इन बंदों में कोई बात है. इन्होंने तो सोचा भी नहीं था कि चीनियों के साथ आप इस तरह से सीना तान के खड़े हो जाओगे और वो चुप हो जाएगा, कुछ नहीं करते बनेगा, चीखता रहेगा वो. ठीक है, चीखते रहो यार. तो this is the kind of rise. You are rising, you're still rising, you still have to rise, because while you have risen, जैसे आप बहुत लंबा क्यू रेड लाइट में खड़ा हो जाता है, रेड से ग्रीन होता है, पूरा कॉलम नहीं जा पाता ना. देर इज अ फाइनाइट गैप बिटवीन द हेड एंड द टेल. तो टेल जब तक पहुंचता है वो ग्रीन रेड हो जाता है फिर से. उसी तरह से जब खींच के लोग ऊपर उठ रहे हैं, नीचे तबके के लोग उठना शुरू हो रहे हैं. अभी अभी उठे नहीं है, हमारा गैप है अभी. देर इज अ गैप. और ये उसको टारगेट करेंगे कि ये गैप को और ज्यादा कर दो, जैसे चीन में हुआ है अभी, जो प्रॉब्लम फेस कर रहे हैं वो, कि और ज्यादा इसको दबा के रखो ताकि ये गैप ज्यादा हो जाए, तो फिर इंस्टेबिलिटी आ जाएगा. एम अभी यही है कि इनको भी उठाते रहना है. उठते रहेंगे तो ये अगले 25 साल में ये भी उठेंगे. और इंटरनेशनल अरेना में तो आपका बोलबाला शुरू ही हो गया. आपकी बात सुनते हैं अब. पहले आके आपको लेक्चर करते थे, अब आपसे आके पूछते हैं, बात करते हैं कि आप क्या सोचते हो इसके बारे में, आप क्या सोचते हो उसके बारे में. पहले तो हमने भी देखा है, वो आके बोलते थे कि ऐसा मत करो, ऐसा मत करो, ये गलत है तुम्हारे लिए, ये ठीक नहीं है तुम्हारे लिए. अब ये नहीं बोलते कि ये ठीक नहीं है तुम्हारे लिए. अभी तेल के पीछे रो रहे हैं तो दो चार थप्पड़ पड़ गए, अब चुप हो गए. सब कौन बात करता है जो रशिया से, हम रूस से तेल ले रहे हैं उसके बारे में? कोई नहीं बात करता है, क्योंकि हमसे ज्यादा तो जर्मनी, फ्रांस और इटली लेता है. अब चुप हो गए वो. तो राइज हुआ है, बट ऐसे हमको बैठना नहीं है कि हम राइज कर दिए. नहीं, अभी काम अभी बाकी है. वर्ड्सवर्थ का पोएम का वो लाइन था, माइल्स टू
Hmm.
गो बिफोर आई स्लीप,
Before I
माइल्स टू गो
sleep.
बिफोर आई स्लीप. वो है अभी काम. हमने जितना करना था हमने कर दिया. अभी यंगर जनरेशन, आपका टाइम है, करो, आगे करो. अभी भी हम जो कुछ हो सकता है हम करते रहते हैं. अभी आप लोगों को है जो लीड लेके आगे लेके जाना है. ऑल द बेस्ट.
Sir, thank you so much. I think this is, eye-opening episode where we've actually, dwelled into very, very important subjects. And इसका जो structure हम आपने बनाया, which is very interesting to understand, because यार ऐसा है, a lot of people would have said यार हम लोग specific politics के ऊपर बात नहीं कर रहे, specific incidents के ऊपर बात नहीं कर रहे. उन चीज़ों का analysis already mainstream media में है, social media में भी है. तो उसको दोबारा एड्रेस करने का कोई फायदा नहीं है. व्हाट वी वांटेड टू डू एंड व्हाट सर हैज डन रियली वेल इज टू मेक यू अंडरस्टैंड कि भाई ये होता क्या है. आपके दिमाग में एक चीज आनी चाहिए कि भाई एवरी टाइम आई रीड समथिंग फ्रॉम द वेस्ट और आई गेट समथिंग फ्रॉम द वेस्ट टू यू नो टू व्हिच इज फॉर और अगेंस्ट अ कंट्री, हाउ डू आई एनालाइज दैट, एंड वो एक्चुअली हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा उसके बारे में मैं कैसे इंफॉर्मेशन निकालूं, क्या रियलिटी है उसकी और कैसे आगे होगा, क्योंकि आप everybody would have seen there's a big news that is made and after 3 days it goes गायब because it was all fake. uh, there are multiple things that have people have taken these things about the Ukraine war. आप देखिए, I mean, if you watch my episode from last night, you'll realize there's so many things that have happened. News bunny, it just went off because there was no girth to it. So it's a very relative matter that we need to kind of discuss, and we need to kind of understand. And for that, sir, thank you so much. It's I think it's you've put in a lot of effort to put the structure to this, which is I'm grateful. I'm sure a lot of the guys, there are two three guys who are interested in taking these presentations as a copy. They want to read this a little later, so I'll see if they're
Most welcome.
inquiring,
Most
get in touch
welcome.
with you. But sir, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. It's a open session where we are looking at making people understand this whole concept at a very broad based level, so that आप अपने आप research करके अपने आप और आगे सीखें उसके बाद.
Yeah.
Sir, till next time, probably in the
Yeah.
next week for another subject and another discussion. Jai
Sure.
Hind, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Jai Hind. Thank you.